Hello everyone. Today's lab is going to be a walk cycle tutorial, and I've got a little zombie here that I've been working with, and I want to go ahead and show you exactly how this thing works. So what it is, it's basically a puppet, and using the bone tool right over here, I've created a joint system within him which allows me to animate him pretty easily. Now, if you notice here, I'm using a motion tween to animate him going across the stage. So I'll just go ahead and play this real quick. Bring that over here. So what I've got here is the joints are all moving within a nested symbol of this zombie, or Zombalian, I called him. And I'm animating him across the stage using a motion tween. So it's a really effective way to sort of combine tricks and animation techniques to make an animation as simple as possible when creating it, because they can get really complicated and difficult to work with. So what I've got here is, here's my motion tween, and I've just created some keyframes in here to keep his feet, instead of ice skating around areas like this, they just sort of stays planted for a moment. And that's really all it is, otherwise he'd be what is known as ice skating. A couple things. I've got my character here, so inside scene 1 I have my Zombalian layer, and all I gotta do is click on him and double click. And now what you're gonna see is this green timeline. So what I'm going to do is, this is really great, this bone tool here. So I'm going to click on my bone tool, and there's a couple things that I need to keep in mind. The key poses for a walk cycle, and to make sure that when I'm animating this guy that I don't, oops, using the selection tool, sorry, I don't accidentally bring his arm all the way off. So really all we want to do is just keep it rotating. It can move slightly forward and backward or whatever, but we just want to keep it roughly in this position. So it gives us a little wiggle room to animate him a little bit more exaggerated. And same with the head. We don't want his head to go, what? But, you know, it could be funny, actually, for a zombie's head to fall off, and then maybe he picks it up and puts it back on. I don't know. But, just to give you an idea of how this thing works, I'm just going to go ahead and mess around and show you real quick. So, especially in the legs, this tool is amazing. I'm going to bring this down to like a contact pose, and I'm just selecting on each joint, and I'm just rotating and bending, and now here I'm going to take his ankle, something like that, and maybe I want to bring it just, and this is all IK, which stands for inverse kinematics. And then I'll take this leg and maybe do something like that, and there we go. So here's my sort of contact pose there. So let me go ahead and show you all of the key poses to a walk cycle. Okay, so here I've got my walk cycle reference here. So let me bring this above. So now what you see here is our contact pose, our down pose, our passing position, our up, and our contact. Now these are the main key poses of a walk cycle, and you can really use this to your advantage when creating it. I've started my zombie here in a sort of stereotypical zombie-like walk. Arms straight out, and his arms don't bend because I didn't give him extra joints for that. That's just to keep it simple. And the nice thing about having a reference directly in your file is that if you really want it to be sort of exact, or you know, as close as you want it to be, you'll notice I've got my contact reference right here, and I can sort of reference it back right here. Now, another thing you always want to make sure that you have is a ground line. And in fact, I'm going to put my ground line in here in my main scene 1. And this should already be set up for you in the file I'm going to provide you. Okay. Now, I've got my ground line there, and I can always just toggle this on or off just to make sure. And if you want to make sure that this goes down even more, you can do that as well. Something like that. It's really just a reference point. Okay. So now that I'm in here, I've got my starting position here, which typically you'd start in a contact pose for a cycle, but I'm going to make this one a little bit different only because it doesn't have to be, I don't want it to be exactly like a normal walk because he is a zombie, and I want to give it a little bit of character, give it a little bit of life. And the thing I want to do is each one of these joints, I'm just going to go ahead and slightly adjust according. So now I want to do my down pose. If you want to make this a little bit easier for you, there's not too much difference, and I'm only going every couple frames, and there's not too much difference here in poses. And I'm going to keep his arms fairly straight. We're not going to worry too much about the arms. The legs can be hard enough, but I do like to give it a little bit of motion here. So like with the down pose, I'm going to bring his arms slightly down because he's going to be making contact with the ground. So now we go like so. And then this one, you can see it sort of comes out a little bit more, and I'm going to give his knee just a little bit more. Something like that. Right? And then I'll give his head a little bit here, and even his body, I'll slightly bend down a little bit because he's making this down pose. So here I got the starting position, contact, and I'm going to give this body slightly twist here, and then here I'm going to exaggerate the body just a little bit more. Okay. Now on my next pose, I can go ahead and bring it back over here and make it my passing position. So now I'm going to take this leg, and this makes it really, 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 really easy to do. I'm going to take this leg, I'll put it right here, and then I'm going to take this leg. Ooh. Come on. And I'm working with the constraints of the puppet here. So now his arms, I can bring them slightly back up. And here, let's bring his head back over here. Okay. Got another one here. And I can just go ahead and slide this over. Make it really simple for us. Do something like that. Okay. And bring his body just a twist back. Give his head a tilt back. Bring his arm just up. Bring this arm just a little bit more up. And now I've got this guy starting to walk. Now here, I'm going to add in that extra pose where his leg sort of kicks out because he's got this zombie off-balance kilter kind of thing. So before I go back into my contact, and this is just preference here, really exaggerate this quite a bit. Alright, and then I'll bring this, tilt him back a little bit. Now he's really way back there. And then I'm going to go back into my contact pose. Okay. Now the thing about this is that I have to do this 2 times. So there we go. And now I'm going to start to bring his arms back down. And tilt his head back this way. And give his body a little twist this way. So I threw in an extra pose there. So now I've got one full step. That's just one step. So what we're going to do in the next video is we're going to do the next step, and then I'm going to show you how to cycle it very cleanly. These don't need to be absolutely perfect, but give it your best shot, and I hope you enjoyed this lab.